Hello everyone and welcome to another Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers lore tour. To start our new series of lore tours, I honestly just couldn't help myself but jump right to the end of our Varantic journey to Akadaemia Anyder. Now we know how we came to be in Amarot, but what are we doing precisely here? Well, as the apocalypse spread across the sea from ancient Amarot, the Amarotines managed to capture one of the beasts that it spawned and transported it back here for study. We later learned that it is none other than Akadaemia, the Tempest World Boss fate. Well, that would be Emet-Selch's recreation of Akadaemia in any case. It broke out of its confinement within the Akadaemia, causing no small havoc in the process, and so we've taken the opportunity to investigate this simulacrum of pre-sundering history, knowing that the threats this reconstructed monster could pose to the nearby Ondo and peoples further afield is very real. The Akadaemia itself is obviously a kind of university dedicated to the study, teaching, and perfection of creation magics, the foundation of Amarot society, and the expression of the Amarotines' godlike power. The name Anyder, like so much of Amarot, is a reference to Thomas More's Utopia, a 16th century political satire and medieval answer in many ways to Plato's Republic. It gives an account of normative, social, and political life of an island within the New World called Utopia. Amarot is in fact the name of the capital city of Utopia, and it is situated on the bank of the river Anyder, or Anydrus in Latin, meaning no water. Utopia itself means no place, and many of the names and locations in the narrative are similarly indicative of the unlikely, unrealistic, or ridiculous nature of the fictitious island. The effects of these names is compounded by the fact that we, the Warriors of Darkness, are walking through a reconstruction of a memory, a place that is no real place, on an ocean bed without water. So we begin in the words of Mitron, a wing of the Akadaemia dedicated to the first Mitron, one of the Convocation, and subsequently one of the Ascians. As we know now, the names of the Ascians are merely the titles of their Convocation positions, which had been held by other Amarotines before them. The Ancients had incredibly long, perhaps limitless natural lifespans, but they were not immortal. This space is clearly a lecture hall, purposed to the teaching of marine creation, as the Visitor's Guide excerpt we can find here corroborates. The glyph present throughout this section of the dungeon is no doubt the symbol of Mitron's office. It is almost identical to the glyph for Chaos in Final Fantasy XII, the Scion of Darkness counterpart to Mitron, the Scion of Light, of the Taurus Zodiac. As we shall see later in the dungeon, the Ascian glyphs are a fragment of each of these Convocation symbols. Okay, let's talk about some of these mobs. Engender, as a transitive verb, is synonymous with produce or beget. As an intransitive verb, it means to assume form or to originate. For our purposes, these creatures being engendered means that they were created by the Anyder academics, and that they are the original form of monsters we see elsewhere in the game. So all the flora and fauna we find in the Akadaemia were originally creations of Amarot. Those that we see in the wild around Hydaelyn or Novrant are therefore the progeny of these. The monk we've seen in plenty of other places, it's a reference to a cryptid called the sea monk or monkfish, reportedly caught off the coast of Denmark in the 16th century with a vague resemblance to a monk. The Pterakeitos is a combination of Greek and Latin meaning feathered whale. Cleonidae is a family of sea angel gastropods. The Danbanya I can't figure out an etymology for, but it was a sand piranha in Final Fantasy XII found in the Jensen Sand Sea. So we come to the first boss area called Ichthyology, the study of fish. Onward to the words of Halmarut, with the glyph of Ivalice's Exodus. According to the excerpt here, a master of phytobiological or botanical creation and the probable inventor of the first carnivorous and ambulatory plants. Essentially, Hamelrut was the creator of the first seedkin. No doubt the plants here, as well as the seedkin, are the ancestors of much modern flora. Perhaps there are even some based on Devonian flora that botanical paleontologists could recognize and identify. Unfortunately, I am far from a botanical paleontologist, but I do see a few noteworthy specimens that look exactly like the Rafflesia arnoldi, or corpse lily, the largest flower on Earth, as well as some large protea that could be modelled on the king protea or the Australian waratah. We're already beginning to see a pattern emerge here. It seems that each of the original convocation were masters of creation in a particular field, biome, or element. 14 ancient, godlike entities that together shaped the world and breathed life into it. One of them, a dissident that turned their back on Zodiac and would likely have been disgraced with obscurity. 13, whose records and deeds would have partially survived into the first era of the post-sundered shards, though their denizens could not recall the truth of their nature. It would not be strange for them to be revered as gods. And the 12, as we know, are in fact 13 entities, counting both the twins, Nald and Thal. Just some idle speculation for you. Anyway, here in Hamelrut's Holtorium, we find engendered Lycopersicum. Solanum lycopersicum is the scientific classification for the tomato plant. The anemone is a genus of flowering plant. In Greek mythology, the blood of Adonis at the time of his death, mixed with the tears of Aphrodite, caused the first anemones to sprout and bloom. We also find the original Mandragora seedkin family, a cactuar giant, and a number of snapweed, named for a plant often used in traditional Eastern medicine. Finally, we come to the Marquise Marble, which hardly needs an explanation, but certainly serves as another reason for us to question what function the Amrutines could possibly have thought these creations to serve. Is this just a dozen different marbles all sewed together, or is it the father of the entire genus? It seems like bad breath may be just a sick joke of Hamelrut. From phytobiology, we move into the words of La Habrea, and it seems that his specialty was not so innocuous, consisting of weapons and demons, creations that we would classify today as soulkin, beastkin, and even mistake as voidsent in the case of the bombs. The Bandersnatch we find, particularly in the Dravanian Forelands, its name reference to Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, a monster referenced in passing and depicted by Carroll's illustrator Peter Newell. The Pegasus, too, was evidently a creation of La Habrea. This helps go some way to solve the mystery of the A Realm Reborn primal ponies for us. The Soma looks like an ashkin, but this original creation is probably closer to an elemental. Soma is a Hindu moon deity, as well as a possibly psychoactive potion that was supposed historically to imbue immortality. Of course, we also see plenty of La Habrea's convocation seal, near identical to that of Final Fantasy XII's Mateus, the dark scion to La Habrea's light counterpart. We also see models displayed of the Sabertooth, Harpea, Skatine, and a variety of archaic weapons. Now, the displays here might be purely decorative, or they might in fact be architectural models. We know that a lot of thought and planning went into the designs of master creators like La Habrea, after all. This might not be so significant for the models we see here, but it will be in a moment. We can also find a research report on the spreading apocalypse and a confirmation that the captured monster now escaped was in fact Archaeotania. Since it has the same appearance as Final Fantasy V's Twintania, we should think of the name as a combination of Twintania and the prefix Archeo for ancient. Although what the name would have meant to the Amrutines is beyond me. At last we come upon phantomology, in our context here a place for the study, design, and creation of spectral, ethereal, or supernatural beings. We arrive in time to see an Akadaemia research surrendering all of its life energy in the creation of Quetzalcoatl, in the hopes that it might quell the crisis within Akademia. Knowing what we know about the vast stores of ether boasted by the average Amrutine, this creature would have originally been incredibly powerful. And although it is modeled almost exactly after Quetzalcoatl's Final Fantasy VIII design, it is also extremely reminiscent of the Twelveswood elementals and of Hydaelyn and Zodiac's depictions. a possible common design influence. Quetzalcoatl was a Mesoamerican, i.e. Aztec and Mayan deity, literally feathered serpent, a god of the winds and patron of learning and wisdom, inventor of books and calendars. But let's talk more about this courtyard. The floor looks very much like a classical era star map. In the north end, a presumably related display of a logarithmic pattern, perhaps a planetary orbit, perhaps some arcane geometry used in the Nexus for a particular creation. You might have noticed that the entire dungeon has so far maintained an aesthetic which at times seems eerily similar to that of Sharlayan. Seeing this logarithmic pattern here makes me all but certain that this is no coincidence. Perhaps the logarithmic spiral survived as a symbol through the early post-Sundering eras and took on a meaning that the Sharlayans eventually inherited, like how Azema's symbol once belonged to Sephiroth. Perhaps the connection between Sharlayan and Amarot isn't even so tenuous. Finally, there's a couple of very obvious statues of Zodiac here. I've seen a few theories floating around, taking this to mean that Zodiac existed and was worshipped prior to his summoning in the final days. I think it's far more likely that we are seeing here, as I suggested earlier, a series of architectural models, that it was Laha Brea himself whom designed the vessel for the manifest will of the star. So this is one of those dungeons that definitely leaves us with more questions than answers. The pre-sundered world and the particulars of the fate that befell it is perhaps the greatest mystery in Final Fantasy XIV right now, and it was for this reason that Akadaemia Anyder was one of the very first dungeons I wanted to tour. Particularly, what connection could there be between Amarot and Sharlayan, and between the Convocation and the 12? Are we grasping at straws here, or is there something profound waiting for us just below the surface of our current knowledge? Let me know what you think. Thank you all for watching, and thank you in particular to our generous patrons, without whom these videos might not be possible. You guys are legends. If you would like to consider becoming a patron, then check the link in the description below. If you are a patron and do not see your name listed, please send me a DM on Discord or an email and let me know how you would like to be credited, and so that I can give you permissions in our Discord server to access the patron exclusive channel. If you want to see more Final Fantasy XIV lore content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell, and feel free to drop by on Twitch sometime where I stream full time. Thanks again, take care everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.